Hi, welcome to It's So Delicious. We are in Durham, North Carolina this week, in the heart of the Research Triangle and in the city of medicine. This week, we're going to make some hearty late autumn dishes. We're going to start with a seared salmon, and it's going to be covered with a nice buttery lemon garlic glaze. And we're also going to do sauteed cabbage, and it's going to be very savory and nice, wonderful dish for late fall. And then we'll end it by doing my own sweet potato hash. It's a version of, really it's home fries, I should say, not hash. It's a version of home fries, but done with yams or sweet potatoes. Some people call them yams, some people call them sweet potatoes. But it's like, you know, that breakfast dish you have for brunch with an omelet. Basically, we're going to take that white potato recipe and substitute the yams. So on this show, It's So Delicious, what we do is we make food that is healthy, hearty, and full of flavor. We also pay attention to the amount of salt, animal fats, and sugars we use in our food. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't use those ingredients. What that means is we pay strict attention to the amount of items, the amount of those ingredients that we use in our food. And so when I say healthy, we don't mean bland or boring. We mean food that is hearty and will benefit you nutritionally, not processed, not overly manufactured. We also try to use ingredients that are locally sourced. When possible, we use organic ingredients. And you know, whenever we do, I'll mention it. All right, let's start with our salmon. We have some wild-caught salmon here. It's about 6 ounces, and this recipe will be for 2 people. So we've got 2 pieces of salmon here. We're going to take some salt, some kosher salt, and we'll kind of just salt the salmon on both sides. There's fillet number 1 and fillet number 2. I really like salmon. It has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, which are supposed to be beneficial nutritionally for you. And we are going to go ahead and put some oil in the pan here. And go ahead. This is vegetable oil, guys. And you could use olive oil. Olive oil tends to impart a lot of flavor in your food. So I just have just some plain old vegetable oil. We want to make sure that this is on medium heat here. This is a little high, so I'm going to turn this down a bit. And you'll know when your oil is ready because you'll see some smoke. That's called the smoke point. After it gets hot enough, it starts to smoke, and then you'll want to quickly use it before it flashes into flame, obviously. Let's take some freshly ground black pepper here. We like fresh ground black pepper. It has just a brighter, more truer flavor than the one that's been sitting on the shelf for eons. So let's go ahead and take our fillets and gently place them in the pan here. Okay? And we're going to go ahead and place the other one, and we're going to let that sit. Now, I like to take a little butter because I like the flavor of butter, but I don't like to cook things in butter. So we'll just go ahead and flavor that salmon with the butter here and just kind of move it around, just the butter. Do not touch, folks, when you're making any kind of seafood or meat, you want to just place your meat in the pan and leave it there, okay? You don't want to move it around. You don't want to check to see if it's done yet. You can tell if it's done by checking the outer edges on the bottom of the meat here, okay, you see? Or the seafood. When it starts to turn brown, if you look under, you'll see it'll start to turn brown around these edges here. Then you take a spatula and you'll flip it, okay? So we'll let this sit a while. Meanwhile, we'll take some more oil and start on our sauteed cabbage. Okay, we'll start here. And that's about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. And we want to move that around like such. Okay, and then we'll take a little butter and go ahead. That's about a teaspoon of butter, I'd say. And since this pan is hot, we're going to want to use a pot holder. Okay, some people like to grab hot things and think they're like Superman. But, you know, I kind of like my skin. So, and I like for it to stay healthy. So we're going to use pot holders. Now let's go ahead and start with our onions. Our salmon is almost ready to be flipped here. Okay, and we'll Start with some julienne onions here. And we'll place this here. Now, we can add a little bit of salt, some kosher salt, and a bit of black pepper. Stir that around. And we're going to go ahead and start sauteing our onions. Okay, let that sit for a bit. And I believe our salmon is done. Well, not done, but it is brown underneath. So let's go ahead and flip. Okay, and basically, you'll know because it comes right up really easily, and you can flip. And let's get the other fillet. And let's move the oil around so it coats the entire pan and flip. At this point, you want to go ahead and take your salmon and put it in the oven. I have a preheated oven here. It's 350 degrees. You could do 375, depending on how well done you want your salmon. That could stay in there 10 minutes. It could stay in there 15 minutes. You just want to make sure that you cook your salmon through. If you like it, medium rare. It could be pink in the middle or milky. It's all to what your tastes are. So now our onions are sauteing. Let's add our, for my recipe here, we're going to add these strips of red sweet bell peppers. And we're going to turn the other burner off here. And we're going to turn that up a bit. Okay. I'm going to saute that up and let that finish cooking. So this recipe I like because I like the crunchiness of the cabbage, but I don't so much like boiled cabbage. So I tend to saute all my cabbage because I want the crunch. I don't want a soggy vegetable. So while that's cooking, we can also start on our home fries. So our pan is nice and hot here for our home fries. Again, let's add some vegetable oil. That's about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. Actually, that's a little bit more than a tablespoon. That's probably about 2 tablespoons worth. And then we're going to use a little bit more butter than we would the fish or the cabbage. So you want to go ahead and swirl that around because you want to incorporate the flavor of the butter in the oil. Okay, now you're going to want to add your potatoes. Excuse me, yams. You want to add your yams. Or as some people call them, sweet potatoes. Ooh, we lost one. So let's go ahead and that's about enough for 2 people, which is about a cup. And we'll go ahead and move that around. Okay. All right. We're going to add some salt. Go ahead and check our peppers and our onions. And that looks like they're pretty sauteed there, almost caramelized. So let's go ahead now and add our cabbage. And we have some shredded cabbage here that I cut earlier. And this is just your regular run-of-the-mill cabbage that you can find in any fresh produce aisle. And what I've done is add about 1.5 cups of cabbage, and that's going to saute down very nicely. Now let's check on our sweet potato home fries once again. Let's give that a whirl. You could also use your spatula here. I choose to use wooden utensils so I'm not scraping my pans. And we're going to let that kind of sit and get nice and brown. Okay? You want a nice brown, kind of caramelized, what we call caramelized color on the cabbage. Now, we want to saute our cabbage here so the onions don't get too brown or burnt. And move that around. And I don't know about you guys, but when it's fall and it's cold, or late fall and it's cold outside and it's nearing winter, I like hearty food. But when I have hearty food, I don't want the pounds. So I really pay attention to the exact amount of fats and so forth. I remove that because that's a particularly fatty, fibrous part of the cabbage that I don't particularly want in there. So getting back to the fact that I like hearty foods, but I don't want the pounds, I think, you know, it's best to pay strict attention to the amounts of fats you're adding in your food, because that way you can make it flavorful without having it be so bad for you. You can also start using herbs and spices to spice up and use the herbs to flavor your food versus animal fats and salts and sugars. That helps a lot. And that's pretty much what I'm doing here. So it seems our cabbage has reduced in volume and is almost done. This is the point where we can add, when I add my garlic that I've already minced. It's fresh garlic minced. That's about a teaspoon rather. And then I'm going to add about a teaspoon of white wine vinegar. Almost like sauerkraut, but not quite. Okay, I'm also going to add a teaspoon of yellow mustard. And that'll sit there. And then we're going to want to go ahead and kind of incorporate that into the cabbage. This is called flipping. Not everyone, I don't recommend that everyone at home try that, but you can also use your spatula, or you could use your tongs. Move that around like that. And these you can find in, obviously, any kind of kitchen supply store. They're a staple you should have in your kitchen. Tongs, I really like these things. And I also like wooden utensils. So let's kind of move that around. And it seems as though our sweet potato home fries are browning. If you want to get those, if you can look closely, look at this sort of outer, this is sort of the color you want there. You want those kind of brown to dark brown bumps on your sweet potato. So let's go ahead and move that around. Saute that. Okay. Now this is the time where you can go ahead and add your onions. And I happen to have some onions here. So cut up in strips there. Go ahead and add those. About a half a cup. You'll next want to go ahead and turn off the burner to your cabbage, because it's done essentially. And we can now add our garlic. Okay? And that's about a tablespoon of minced garlic. And sort of go ahead and incorporate the onions and the garlic. Now, I use fresh, guys. I don't advocate the minced jarred garlic. I don't really like the garlic in a tube. If I'm making it in, I don't know, a sauce that I'm going to put on a burger, perhaps I will. But fresh is always, always, always best. Take the time to you know, find a garlic smasher or just cut it up with your knife at home. I'm still incorporating the onions and the garlic here. I'm sort of moving it around so the sweet potatoes don't burn. Now, this dish is essentially finished, and we are now going to check on our salmon, folks. And our sweet potato hash is almost done. At this point, we can add our sweet red peppers. And we'll do that by slicing. And we want them chopped. Peppers tend to do well chopped. And then we can go ahead and add those to your home fries. And let's move that around like such. Now, at this point in our sweet potato home fries, they are pretty tender. At this, you can go ahead now and finish it in the oven. Let's cut the burner off. And at the same time, you can rescue your salmon from out of the oven. And as you can see here, I've got a nice cooked salmon here. here is our salmon, in which we are going to remove from the pan, and we'll place it on the side here. We are now going to make the sauce for our salmon using the flavor from the salmon that we just seared. We're going to keep those like salmon meat pieces in there and the salt and the pepper. And we're going to bring our pan up to a high heat. We're going to do this quickly. So while that's coming up to a very high heat, we're going to go ahead and add our garlic. I'm going to go ahead and start adding our garlic and let that roast for a minute, or let that sit for a second. Meanwhile, as promised, we have bacon. And we're going to go ahead and take our bacon, and we are going to kind of just give it a little chop here into the sweet potato hash, which we just moved from the oven. We'll place that here. We'll take our crumbled bacon and kind of crumble that in there. And we'll cut up some more bacon. You can never have enough bacon, right? God, bacon is so wonderful. I love it. What I did with this bacon is I laid it on a flat slotted pan on a drain board, and I let the bacon cook in the oven, and the grease, the fat, the rendered fat from the bacon is what I'm going to use for another recipe. So let's go ahead and kind of toss our sweet potato hash and just sort of move that around. Now that's done. We're going to set that aside, leave it there, turn it off. Our sauce for our salmon, got our garlic roasted. We can now add some white wine. And I happen to have some white wine. I happen to have some white wine here. And let's go ahead and deglaze, what's called deglazing the pan. And we are just sort of move that around a bit. Let's add a little pepper. And let's add a little bit of salt. And let's sort of let that saute a bit. And let's add the juice of half of a medium-sized lemon. Not too much. Just about a tablespoon or so. You don't want to overpower the sauce with lemon. You just kind of want to give it a little flavor. So let's go ahead and move that around. And let's find some butter. And I happen to have some butter here that we'll just kind of throw in there. And that's only about a tablespoon. And we'll sort of incorporate the butter into the sauce. And let's take our salmon and sort of place it back in the sauce. And let's just kind of put this here. And let's take a spoon and let the sauce kind of gather at the corner of the pan here. And then take it and then just pull it like that. And coat your salmon with the sauce you just created. Okay, so it'll be nice and flavorful. And that's what I usually do. All right. And we're not using any flour or cornstarch. We're just simply using the juices from vegetables, the lemon, and the white wine, and the salmon itself. Now that's fairly coated. We're going to go ahead and turn this pan off, and we're going to assemble our dish. Welcome back, guys. We're going to start plating our salmon here. Let's get our cabbage, and which has been sauteed with some delicious white onions and some little bit of mustard and some little bit of white wine vinegar. And we'll just go ahead and place it in the center of the plate. You know, I love cabbage. I don't know how much you guys love cabbage, but I grew up with it. I like the way it grows. It looks so pretty when it grows. And it has those big veiny leaves. And you just, I mean, to me, I just love plants and the way they, you know, the way they look when they start as small plants and then they start to grow. And cabbage is one of those plants that I just really am struck by when it does grow and comes to full term. Now, this is our bacon bacon sweet potato hash. And we're just going to kind of place that alongside of the cabbage there. And you always use a little bit more hash. Let's go ahead and do that. This would also go well with an omelet, this sweet potato hash. And now let's get the rest of our salmon here. Place that on the top. And kind of go ahead and move that to the top there. Wonderful. Okay, salmon, stay still. All right, so let's now go ahead and get some scallions, which basically look like this. This is our scallion, okay? And I've cut off the root, and I sit it in water so that it can stay nice and firm. And then you cut it into little strips, which you can garnish your end product there with. All right, and this is some smoked paprika that we just kind of put on the dish just to make it look pretty. All right, you kind of like things that look pretty, don't you? I know I do. And we can now go ahead and start to taste this. It looks delicious, and I'm sure it is delicious because this is so delicious.